inside of me. You better watch out if you ignite me's a road ahead of full prophecy. To be the greatest beast the world has ever seen. I feed him every day like the bones clean. I feed him all the hate and he grows me. And he gets caused real big, pissed off quick. And if you cross him, you might drop dead. Metaphorically, of course, settling the score. Never getting bored, loves of blood and gold. Always wanting more, freedom from the source. They don't really listen until they feel it for the party. And if you start shit, you be heartless in the darkness. Torn apart quick, you left scars ripped. You be chewed up and discarded. And this world ain't right, won't accept it. Negative energy, I expect it. Once it's in your mind, it's infectious. So fight for your life and reject it. You better give me space, I'm protective. My adrenaline spikes when I'm threatened. And if you stay in my way, I'm aggressive. Cause when I'm no exit, I'll kill when I'm desperate. There's no exit, I'll kill when I'm desperate.
Yellow. All right, so tonight's episode is going to be short, and I'm not going to promote it, so we might have a small room today. That's all right. We're going to do some Dan McKellen, just because it's a good jumping off point for what we've been talking about the last few weeks. Then from there, we might do some Basecamp, just because I found their latest episode interesting. Remember, if you do watch their videos, please tell them that I sent you. Let's try and promote my channel, guys. Come on. And after that, there's about two other things that I want to watch. Possibly, I don't know how copyright strike happy she is or claim happy she might be, but I kind of want to check out Barry Weiss on her interview with Ben Shapiro and Sam Harris, just because some of what they were talking about is relevant to my broader stuff. Also, we're going to be expanding the channel now that kind of the core purpose driving my channel has been addressed by larger parties. So I'm going to try not to cuss as much, so that way we can get more monetization. Because if I'm going to stay on YouTube, there has to be a reason. So let's make the reason be, let's make money. And I'm going to also try to keep everything more focused, a little bit more fun, and a little bit more light. That doesn't mean we're not going to hit heavy stuff, but we're just going to change the focus a bit. All right. And I'll change the background in a second. Let's just get to some Dan. Some good old Dan O'Brien.
Hey everybody, my name is Dan.
Hey everybody, my name is Dan McKellen. My name is Dan McKellen. Dan. My name is Dan. Where is it? Okay. So let's do, does the Bible say all these things? Because that's the one that I want to go with. And then we'll do a little bit of why are so many Christians afraid of myth. He does have a brand new one out called Responding to his Accusation that he lied. I don't really care about that. He has, I wish I could do shorts as well as he does, because I would love to have a much larger reception of my work and my material, but it's okay. All right, let's go to his thing, and then while we're playing his video, I'm going to change the background.
Everyone who hates ads will be using this Chrome extension.
Hello, Santiago. How's it going, my friend?
Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. Let's take a look at a video.
Yeah, and it also says that marriage is between one man and one woman.
The Bible says absolutely no such thing. And
so that's actually a perfect starting point with what I want to talk about. So now that my theory that I've been promoting is out there, let's talk more about what it means for the responses, the evolutionary response to threat. So, orthodoxy, which develops out of the Bible. And I would say the Bible actually develops out of orthodoxy, but that's unprovable and solely an opinion of Catholics and Christians. The reason for Christianity and Judaism being against polygamy, polyamory, homosexuality, and other non-orthodox or non-traditional expressions of human sexuality and human pair bonding, or here multiple pair bonding, I guess, is very simple. It's an evolutionary response. It's the antibodies. The apologists are the antibodies of the dogma, so of the body of Christ, if you will. So it's not just a simple defense as they should be. So you have this thing where through natural selection, Christianity, Catholicism, whatever you want to call it, gets proven true because this is the traits that women are choosing for. When women aren't the ones choosing, these are the traits that the men who are controlling the women and using the women as commodities, this is what they're trading for. So I'll marry you to this person because this person has these traits. And the woman is saying, I'll have sex with this person because this person has these traits. If you have polygamy or you have matriarchy, or you have polyamory, or unabandoned homosexuality without it being bisexuality, you hurt the dogmas that are being chosen for. You're hurting the traits that are being chosen for. And so the reason why, even though it's not explicitly in the Bible, why the dogma and the buildup in the framework of the theology, the morals that come out of Christianity, the morals that come out of Judaism, which are roughly the same morals. You can see this if you read Maimonides. You can see this if you read Augustine. So what ends up happening is that to protect itself, you have against heresies. To protect itself, you have to fight against these things. So in the Didache, you have it clearly defined that abortion is not allowed. So you have all these things that you can say are extra biblical or post biblical, however you want to word it. Although the Didache, I think, is actually written before the Bible's finalized. But what you're getting at, what you have to understand is that these are fighting against competing ideologies. So these competing ideologies, are all fighting to be the evolutionary fittest. And the reason why Christians, even though they might not know so consciously, the reason why they fight against these other ideologies is because they're acting like the white blood cells of the body of Christ. They're acting like the white blood cells of the ideology of Christianity. And they have to defend it because it's survival of the fittest. So if there's a competing narrative that can actually undermine the ideology of Christianity, they have to attack it. They have to fight it. So it's as I said to someone in one of my previous videos in the comment section, other ideologies are fine if it can be assimilated, if it can be subsumed, if it can be dismissed. That's all fine. It's when it can't be. It's when it's competitive. That's when the friction happens. But Christianity and Catholicism especially is a great example of this, the universal nature. If it can subsume you, if it can assimilate you and make you part of the group, it will. So it'll take holidays, it'll take traditions, folk culture, and it'll just weave it into its narrative. Okay, so the Hispanic people do this tradition. We're going to take it in, and now this tradition is going to be part of the Catholic tradition. We're going to Christianize it. We're going to bless it. We're going to let it go. And that's one of the things that Tyler Marshall missed when he got so angry about Pachamama, is that, yeah, it's a different representation of the Virgin Mary. It doesn't matter. It needs to be incorporated, and it needs to be reassimilated by that native culture so that native culture can be assimilated into the greater Catholic community. So if you don't understand the process of assimilation and dissemination, you really don't understand how Christianity spreads. It's not through conquest. And that's what Bill Maher and everybody gets so wrong. It spreads through the meme. It spreads through the mind virus, as Dawkins might say. And you need that spread. You need that inculturalization. You need the, if you will, the initial infection, and then it needs to be able to compromise their immunity. It needs to figure out how to crack their immunity in their ideology. And once their ideology is cracked, once it's broken open, now we can dump all of the Christian dogma, all the theology of our ideology into their understanding of reality, and we got them. Now they're Catholic, now they're Christian. So that is how ideas spread. That is how ideas conquer other ideas. So I think that that's extremely important, and I do think that is one of the reasons why people are so upset about the Dan McCullens of the world, is that they are. Yeah, Guadalupe is a great example. Thank you, Santiago. And I'm not going to talk about where I live yet. I am eventually going to put my name out there. I am eventually going to put where I live, not my address, but where I live specifically, once I do the GoFundMe for my dad. But yeah, I live next to the Basilica, near the Basilica, I guess I should say. And yeah, we have a San Juan de Valle. You know, we have a Guadalupe down here. So yeah, yeah. I think it's Our Lady of San Juan de Valle is the one who appeared here in a field. So yeah, so it's super important. It's super important to cracking the code, to cracking into the DNA of someone else's belief system. That's why the canonization of Catarina, I believe is her name. It's a saint. It's a Native American saint. Her canonization is super important into turning the Native Americans into Catholics. It's just important. You need to have a representation of them and show them that, yes, even you, your people, your group go to heaven, and therefore your people are not separate from our people. We're the same people. And so you do these things to get into their way of thinking. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging the facts. So that's fine. She's in heaven. She's in heaven. That's good.
And Genesis 2:24 is not an exception, because that text is not prescribing, delineating, defining, or limiting what marriage was. It's not even describing a marriage. It's just observing the fact that pair bonding takes place, and then using this myth about.
So I was going to do Wise Disciple at some point. Maybe we'll do it right now. We'll go from Dan, this video, and the next video, and we'll go to Wise Disciple, because Wise Disciple has a really bad understanding about marriage, and it hurts his case. There's nothing wrong with saying that the Bible supports traditional marriage. There's nothing wrong with saying traditional marriage comes out of the Bible. Again, perfectly fine argument. The problem is saying that from the beginning of time, this is what marriage looked like, because that's not what marriage looked like from the beginning of time. We have historical record, we have archaeological evidence, we have other writings from other cultures. This is not traditional marriage. Traditional marriage that we know of developed out of Christianity and developed out of Judaism. But what marriage was before Judaism and Christianity defined it is not what marriage was historically. So I think using these kind of anachronistic retellings of history hurts the Christian cause and hurts the case for our truthfulness. Because even if you truly believe what you're saying, you're lying. To be fair, Marshall does come from an angelic background. Yeah. Hey, Thomas. Thomas, I don't know if you were here a few minutes ago, but I made the announcement that I'm changing the focus of the channel. We're still going to do anti-apologetics, but since Jordan Peterson and Richard Dawkins expressed the theory that I've been promoting for so long, no one's going to look at this channel and think that I'm the one who said it first, even if I was. I don't have any credentials. People called me a crazy person for saying what they said for so many years. So I'm gonna do two little tweaks. They're not gonna be huge tweaks. So don't think that you don't have to click away. Like it's still gonna be the show that you love, but I'm gonna cuss a little bit less because if the point of my channel is not to promote this theory that I have, now that it's out there, now that it's going to be labeled as someone else's theory, there's no reason for me to promote it. Like I said in another video, I'm not a cheerleader, so I'm not going to cheerlead Jordan Peterson. That's just not who I am. I like Jordan, but I'm not going to be his cheerleader. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cuss a little bit less, and I'm going to try to, now that I am monetized, now that I can be monetized, I would like to become monetizable. So I'm going to change the focus just a little bit to being profitable and to try to grow the audience in a different way than we've been approaching so far. That's the only tweak, but just in case you weren't here for that announcement, that's what we are changing, because otherwise there's no point to this channel. So yeah,
The first woman being created from a chunk of the body of the first man to account for the occurrence of pair bonding. It's not saying this is all that marriage is allowed to be. It's saying, you know how guys go off and pair bond and create independent kinship units? Well, it's because the first woman was taken from a chunk of the body of the first man. Ta-da. It is.
I don't agree with that assessment of what the Bible is doing there. I think the Bible is arguing against other creation myths, and they're inverting the way that it's understood to be. So in all the other creation myths, woman comes first and then man. And the men that exist are different than the men that exist now. So here it's making men natural, and it's making men the beginning instead of women. So it's inversing the story the way that it's told by other groups. So I think that it's doing a different thing than what he claims is doing. Neither one of us can prove that. We don't have time machines.
Is not a prescription of any kind, and one of the clearest indicators of that is the fact that this text was written during a period when polygamy was normative. Not everybody practiced it because not everybody could afford to maintain more than one household. But
I think his definition of normative is incorrect. Allowable, tolerable might be the better word. For it to be normative, it would have to be practiced by a majority, and it's not. Historically, polygamy is looked down upon in many different ancient cultures. So even if there is some type of polygamy or some type of harem or I don't know, courtesan thing going on with the kings and the queens of Israel and their rulers, that doesn't mean that it's going on with the everyday person. So I'd have to see more on that, and I've read way more on ancient Greek culture than I have on ancient Israeli culture. So I'm not one to speak on that, but I think his wording there is too defensive of his own opinion. I think he's using shorthand when he should be using long form.
during this time period, nobody ever had anything negative to say about the practice itself of polygamy. That would only happen centuries later, when Greek philosophical and social conventions began to influence Greco-Roman period Judaism and early Christians. But none of that is anywhere in the New Testament.
That's not completely true. You can get this guy's implications from the New Testament. And you can definitely get it from the theology that influenced the New Testament. You can definitely get it from the dogma that came out of it. So, again, I think Dan's using shorthand when he should be using long form.
That abortion is the killing of an innocent child.
The Bible says absolutely no such thing because it never...
So, again, here, Dan's not wrong. But to say that the Bible doesn't imply these things, I mean, it implies a lot. But the actual ruling comes from the Didache, not from the Bible. So that's just important to note. There's a lot of things that come from the theology and dogmas that are extra-biblical or pre-biblical that have nothing to do with the final form of the Bible. And as a Catholic, I'm totally okay with that. Come on. Come on up. Come on up. No. Come up. If you're going to talk, come on camera. Come on. There we go. Good girl. Mm-hmm. Meow, meow. import it there. Right, no address. Do you want to say anything to the people at home before we keep going? Okay. All right, she's done. She's good. And in case you're wondering, yes, I did gain a little bit of weight. I did gain a little bit of weight with my broken foot, but I'm on week 5. They said to wait 6 weeks before I can start doing cardio again. So I'm gonna start pushing myself a little bit. I'm gonna start off with walking. I'll get into jump rope and running later. But yeah. Hey BS, good to see you.
Never addresses the question of abortion, but it does address the question of when a fetus becomes a person. And the Bible has contradictory ideas about that. It has more explicit ideas, and it has ideas that we must.
And as I said, and I'm going to use Dan's word, because I'm a believer in univocality, but basically because I'm a believer in inspiration, I believe the meaning comes out through the apparent contradictions, and those were supposed to be quote marks, through the apparent contradictions and through the paradoxes of the different texts. So I think that you can get to these implications based on your hermeneutical approach of getting these different ideas from different time periods, different communities to work together. And since Dan denies that, although the writers that he recommends, because I've been reading the books that he recommends. I want to be very straight on that. I've been reading the books that he recommends, and I have more reviews coming up. Right now, I'm working on something else. I got something else going on in my life that's kind of taking up a lot of time. Anyway, I kind of missed my point. But the point is that the writers that he recommends acknowledge that there are methods of hermeneutics that do exactly what he says is not being done with the Bible. He just doesn't like hermeneutics, and he doesn't like apologetics. That's different than saying that these ideas can't spring from the Bible, or that the Bible didn't inspire these ideas.
Must infer. The more explicit ideas are throughout the Hebrew Bible, and this is the idea that the fetus becomes a person.
Just because the Bible doesn't explicitly say something, and just because there can be 2 or 3 supposedly contradictory things that when you put them together, you mash them together, it comes up with something completely new, doesn't mean that the implication isn't there. It just means that the implication isn't in this one particular text as it is when it stands alone in its original context. But we are not in its original context. We are currently in whatever year this is. So, yeah.
Person at birth when it draws first breath, because breath is considered the fundamentally constitutive element of human life throughout the entire Hebrew Bible. So much so that 2 words that are used to refer to human life and are frequently translated into English as life, ruach and nefesh, actually mean breath. And another indication of this.
So I've made this argument before, what he's making right now. I'm not saying, but the Christian, I'm assuming it's a Christian guy. I don't know. I've made the argument that Dan is making right now before. I do understand that when the Bible is mentioning the soul, it is talking about breath. And I have a series on here. It's either a 7-part or a 12-part series where I'm reading every book on the soul up until modern times. And originally it means breath. Eventually it means stomach for some reason. I don't know why. And as you're going on, the idea of what a soul is, of what consciousness is, of what humanity is, changes. So you have the orthodox idea that you become more human over time. Zone 2 aerobic exercise is key. It's like magic. Okay. I don't know what Zone 2 is, but I'm assuming that's not the long one, right? Long form running is not the ideal. It's the short burst and long rest, right? That one, so you can maximize your muscle oxygen intake, so therefore you burn more fat. That's the one, right, Thomas? I'm assuming. I know all this stuff. I have all the books, but it's been so long since I've trained anybody. I can't remember all the nuances.
This is the legal treatment of a fetus as more property than person. We see this in Exodus 21, where we have legislation.
And there's, again, for Christians who are going to come at this and be upset that he's saying this, understand that that is the correct historical understanding. People are property. God owns reality, owns the world, owns whatever you want to call it, owns Israel. The king is his slave. The people or the functionaries are the slave of the king. The functionaries' territory, their people are the slave to them. The family is the slave of the father. The the servants, the slaves are the servants of the I don't know of the people, and under them are the women, and under the women are the children, and the children have almost no rights. If you think animals didn't have rights in ancient times, go look at how children are treated. They are not treated well in the ancient world. So a baby, an infant, a child, it is very rare that an ancient culture holds value in that outside of potential life. So while an individual person in history might hold their unborn child in very high esteem, the culture as a whole did not. And unfortunately, that's in almost everything that you read. So an individual, whether it's King David, whether it's Julius Caesar, might hold their own child in high esteem, or in this case, Cleopatra, might hold their own child, unborn child, in high esteem. The greater culture at large does not hold that unborn child in high esteem.
About what to do should two men who are fighting accidentally injure a pregnant woman and either cause a miscarriage or cause her death. If the injury kills her, that activates talionic justice, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, indicating she's a legal and moral person. What happens to her is done to the perpetrator. If the injury results in a miscarriage, the husband imposes a fine because the fetus was considered a piece of property, and specifically his property. So that's the more explicit view. The other view is not explicit in the Bible, so we can only infer it. But that is the view influenced by Greek philosophy that shifts the understanding of life as not about breath, but about the presence of a soul. When did ensoulment happen? When did the soul enter the body?
Long form, 60 to 90 max, 60%. Okay. So the long one. Yeah, for when I got in shape I shouldn't say the first time, when I got in shape the last time, I guess that's how I'll say it. I was doing short sprint bursts, so I was doing less than 1 minute at max speed 7 times. I got up all the way to, I think, 14 times or 20 times per session. So it'd be a total of 1 hour when I got all the way to my max. It would be a total of 1 hour of running, but it wouldn't be jogging. It would be like sprinting as hard as I could for like 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and then kind of walk until I got my energy back and then go again. And yeah, so that's what I used to do a long time ago, and I'd love to get back to that.
Body. And Greek philosophy had 3 different schools of thought. The Epicurean,
Thank you for the advice, Thomas. I like that.
and the Pythagoreans said it happened at conception. The Aristotelians said it happened between 40 and 90 days of gestation, somewhere around the quickening. The Stoics said it happened at birth.
And the quickening gets debated on what that is and whether or not there is an actual quickening. There's a whole lot that goes on in the discussion of the soul, especially when you get to the medieval time period. But most of the stuff that we have is speaking against other stuff. Yeah, hit.
There's debate within early Christianity. Probably the majority view is leaning into the Epicurean Pythagorean view until the 4th century CE, when Augustine says no, it's the Aristotelian view. Abortion is unseemly prior to the quickening, but it does not become murder until the quickening, when the fetus becomes a person. That was the consensus view within Christianity until the 19th century. But that's not in the New Testament. But what we do have in the New Testament is the suggestion that that was the view of personhood in Luke's story about the supernaturally orchestrated fetal leap of John the Baptist, which would fit with the notion that John the Baptist became a person at the quickening. But again, that's something that we must infer because that's not explicit.
I have another one that's...
And if you'd like more information, I go into a lot more detail in my forthcoming book. The Bible says so, what we get right.
Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Let's see. Sweetheart, I can't move. You're in the way of me turning my chair. Well, nothing I can tell you about that. Where is my book? Well, I can't find it right now because the cat won't get up, but there's a book that's from Human Kinetics. It's on track and field, and I think it has one of the best running advice and running form and running techniques that I've ever read, and I used it since I bought it over 10 years ago. Okay, let's see what's the next one.
Lego, let's go. for you.
All right, let's see it.
And just wanted to let you know I've been a big fan for a while and really enjoy your videos.
Hey, I appreciate that.
I mean, I don't appreciate that because you're not saying that to me. So that's kind of painful. You don't like my videos? What? You don't like what? Just because I'm Mexican? Is it because I'm Mexican? Is that it?
Thank you.
But my question is why are the more conservative elements of the Christian church afraid of myth? I think it's pretty
So this is actually, which is why I wanted to play the video. The popes have used the language of myth when talking about Genesis specifically, especially the first half of Genesis. And apologists will turn that into, oh, it's polemic. And I agree, it is polemic. That is the right term. But they're very scared to use the term myth. But if you read the writings that they're quoting, if you read either the theologians or the popes who are writing on this change, the sea change in the way that you look at the Old Testament, they're using the word myth. So I think it's a word that we have to stop being afraid of.
obvious that several stories in the Bible are myth. The story of Job, for instance. Jesus, when he used parables, those seem to be kind of their stories, maybe not strictly.
I do not understand the people who try to say that the parables are real incidences. That makes no sense. I've met a few, and that's weird. It's literally a parable. A parable's a fable.
Definition of a myth, but similar and along those lines. Why are many people of the Christian faith afraid of myth, that it somehow devalues the scriptures or their traditions? And I thought you'd probably have an interesting take on that.
Hey, thank you for a wonderful question. I would say two things in response. The first is that within anthropology and religious studies and other fields of study since the late 19th and early 20th centuries, there have been a bunch of arguments about the relationship of paganism to myth. And so there's this dichotomy that has kind of developed that folks like Yehezkel Kaufman and others have suggested is distinguished by the presence or absence of myth. So like real monotheism is not mythological. It has no myth, whereas paganism and polytheism are chock full of mythology and myth. And so there is, I think, kind of an intuitive...
I think this is kind of like the people who use the word cult incorrectly, and they're like, well, my religion's not a cult. Yeah, it is. It's the literal definition of cult. Your religion, whatever your religion is, especially if you're a monotheist, is the literal definition of cult. So you just got to stop being afraid of the word. Myth and cult. When you're talking about the philosophy of religion, that's what it is. It's myth and cult. Don't be scared of the word. Don't let someone shame you into being like, oh, it's not a cult. Yeah, it's a cult. It's a sect. It's a denomination. It's a faith. It's a religion. Yeah, we're okay. We're okay. You didn't lose your faith. They're just using a word you don't like. Get comfortable with the word. You'll be fine.
Perception among those who are aware of some of these broader fields of study that myth is a bit of a contaminant. And I think there's also a perception that more conservative strands of Christianity...
And again, I think that has to do with the common usage of the word and not the technical definition. And if the technical definition ever shifts and changes to mean something different, then yeah, we shouldn't use that word. But right now, as it stands, cult and myth are the correct words. And analogy and metaphor are also the correct words. I know religious apologists don't like the words because of the connotation in common parlance. Get over it. Start using the term correctly and correcting people when they use the term incorrectly. And maybe you can get people over the stigma of the word.
Christianity have been losing ground since the 19th century against science, because we've had a lot of advancements in a variety of different fields of study across the hard and the soft science.
That is a Protestant understanding and not based on actual reality or data.
For instance,
El Moman, why are you being Protestant right now in your atheistic apologetics?
we better understand the age of the earth now, which has caused a problem for a lot of conservatives and the notion of the historicity.
No, it hasn't caused a problem for a lot of conservatives. It's caused a problem for a lot of literalists. You can go all the way back to Origin. You can go back to the first commentaries on the Bible where they tell you, don't take this literal. So, again, Dan, you're doing the thing you do where you're using shorthand when you should be using long form.
And inerrancy and inspiration of the Bible, the theory of evolution.
By the way, I love that I've spotted the weakness in Dan's argumentations. I've spotted the weakness in Gavin Ortland's argumentation, in Trent Horn's argumentation. And did I say Gavin Ortland already? And not Reason and Theology, the other, Joe Heschmeyer's. I have yet to delve into where my weaknesses are, and I know they exist.
Evolution, text critical research, different historical, archaeological, anthropological.
My weakness, lack of mass appeal.
Theories and consensuses have pushed back against and gained ground over a lot of the dogmas about the historicity and the inerrancy and the inspiration of the Bible. And so I think there is an intuitive aversion to allowing any cracks in the foundation here. And I think
intuitive, I don't know. I think it goes back. This is why I wanted to cover this video. It's the evolutionary response to danger. Because Protestants specifically have denied the... I took down the piece of paper. Denied... Esta. Because Protestants have denied this, they don't have these defenses. So for a Catholic or an Orthodox person, or any of the other older traditional Christians, if you break literal, we're fine. I mean, if we really have to, we'll just rely on mystery. You just go, it's a mystery. It's a paradox. We're fine. But as a Protestant, if all you have is the literal, I mean, you're screwed once that gets shown to be fallacious. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 9 levels of defense before I have to say the Bible's wrong. If you have plain and literal and that's all you got, the moment I tell you a camel didn't exist in that part of the world at that time, your entire belief system is destroyed because I just showed you that the Bible lied to you. What are you going to do now? So I think it's stupid to be a Protestant, just to be really blunt. But hey, let Gavin try to explain that.
I've seen some of this intuitive phobia bubble to the surface when I talk about the fact that some of the most powerful lessons in the New Testament are not true. They're made up stories. So, for instance, the parable of the Good Samaritan. As soon as I mention that, I often get a lot of people who respond, well, you don't know that's not real. Certainly that happened at some point in history. How do you know that that's not historical? And to me,
I don't understand why you need to make the parables literal. They're parables. It's okay. Jesus can tell a joke. Jesus can tell a story. He's fully human and fully God. We believe everything's a grand design, right? God can tell a story. He can create a narrative. He can take strings of different people's lives and put them together. Yeah, it's fine. You don't have to be that, I don't know, obnoxious, obtuse.
me, that manifests this kind of just reflex, this intuitive aversion to acknowledging that a lesson was taught with fiction. And so I think that intuitive aversion is a big part of it, but I think it does creep into some of the more informed elements of Christianity that are aware of the way the history of religion school has treated mythology and differences between monotheism and paganism and polytheism and things like that. So I think it's pretty complex, but it's definitely there.
Okay, we're good there. No, we're good. We're good there. Okay, let's go to the next one, which will be... Do we want to do Asmongold or do we want to do Basecamp? Let's do Asmongold. Let's do Asmongold. And then we'll go to... Is it this one? Control. Twitch might not exist soon, so I clean my room. I like this. I like that he cleaned up his room. I think it might be his clips channel. Let's see. I think it's this video. Is it this video? I think it's this one. Let me be sure. Okay, no, it's this one. So we're going to start off with this. We're going to do a little, we're just going to touch this. And then we're going to jump to Humanity is Doomed, because that's what I want to talk about. I think this is going to be fun. But we'll get to that in a second. From here, we got Basecamp. And then we have Ben Shapiro and Sam Harris. And then we're good.
Well, back at it again, huh? Apparently, like, me getting suspended really set a lot of things into...
So I did not do a video on his initial misspeaking, if you will. Let me give you my thoughts on that before we get into this. I support Israel. I like Israel. So I get what he was saying. But I don't think what he said was right. And I don't think what he said was properly informed. I don't think that his apology was right either. His apology was worse. He misspoke worse in his apology about the situation than he did when he said the offensive thing that was completely crass and wrong to say. I think you can say, yeah, I support Israel, but I hate what they're doing right now. And I think that they are verging on war crimes. Like that they are. Like there's no, they're starting a fight with every single community that's around them, and if America stops helping them, they're screwed. It's not wise, and you can say that, and still say you're not a fan of the other groups, and still say that the other groups are wrong for doing what they're doing. That's fine. So I just think that he pushed the limit of what is allowed to be said on Twitch, and he crossed the line, which is unfortunate for him and unfortunate for those who follow him blindly. So yeah, that's my opinion on the initial one, but let's get into this, because I think the fallout is more interesting than the actual him screwing up and then him undermining his own credibility by apologizing when he said, if I'm ever in this situation, I'm never going to apologize. And the first thing he did is apologize. But I think it's good if he leaves OTK. And I think it's good if he stops with the red pill rhetoric bullshit. I said I wasn't going to cuss anymore, and I did it. The red pill rhetoric BS. It has to stop, because you can't take him seriously if he just becomes an ideologue.
Emotion, didn't it?
Twitch banned users from Israel Palestine from making new accounts for a whole year and told no one.
That's bad.
People realized Twitch approved a racial profiling segment at TwitchCon and then banned the whole
I thought this was a funny hypocrisy that happened.
panel after a month. Then you have sitting US congressmen asking what the hell is going on at Twitch. Allegedly.
I think the biggest problem with Twitch is not Twitch as a platform. It's Hassan Piker and other chat only streams. I don't think a stream like mine would do well on Twitch. It doesn't do well on Facebook, on YouTube anyway. But I don't think it would do well on Twitch. I think I'd get banned the first time I say something positive about Christianity or positive about Israel. That being said, the people who are supporting the left, I guess, are grifters. They're not being honest, and they're saying absolutely horrendous things that no one on either the center or the right could get away with saying. And I do think that is a problem. And I do think that adds to the toxicity and to the downward spiraling of Twitch. You can't play to the lowest denominator, and I think Twitch needs to start addressing that. I have a Twitch channel. I want to do more on Twitch, but there's no room on the platform for someone like me. There's barely room on YouTube for someone like me. There was room for me 10 years ago. Right now, the way YouTube is, I'm irrelevant, to be very blunt. But at least I'm allowed on here. On Twitch, I'd be banned immediately just for being a Christian and a Republican. Like I would just be banned. I'd be dead in the water. So
More than half of the advertisers are already pulling out. And then you have, allegedly, Twitch employees saying this about our Baltimore.
This next segment, I just like to call Twitch f***ing hates Asmongold. He's a Dr. Disrespect apologist. That's weird. Did more people at Twitch know? Did more people at Twitch know about Dr. Disrespect? Did they know what happened? Why are you calling him a Dr. Disrespect apologist? I wouldn't recommend consuming Asmongold content. Upvoted by 7 people, liked by more. If anyone is curious why, go to his subreddit and look at the type of vomit that they put onto the internet. I don't even care if Asmon isn't a garbage person, because the majority of his audience appears to be. So they're basically like, they hate.
by the way, there's no one's ever gonna hear this part. BS, I guess this is for you. BS and Thomas, this is for you guys. Santiago, if you're still here, I would love to argue. 3 months from ago, 6 months ago, this wasn't the case. Right now, it is the case. I'd love to argue with Hassan. I'd love to debate Hassan. Someone can make that happen. I will debate him on anything. I don't think there's anything I agree with him with. I'll argue with him that the sun is not the center of the earth, not the center of the universe, and that the earth is the center. You know what I'm saying? Like, if he thinks the sky is blue, then the sky must be red. I will argue with that dude. That's not a great challenge, but yeah, that's all I got.
Asmongold, even if he's done nothing wrong. Again, he did something wrong. But that said, they hate him even if he didn't do anything wrong.
I put in my appeal, and it was the same day that all the controversy started. And I know for a fucking fact, I don't know for a fact, but I think there's a very high probability that the people at Twitch were like, there is no fucking way we're going to unban him right now. And he's going to come back on this day, and he's going to farm.
Yeah, but you shouldn't have apologized the way you apologized. First off, you said you would never apologize. You were in this situation, and you immediately folded. You folded like a chair. That was pathetic. But beside that, if you were going to apologize, you should have apologized to the people whose deaths you were condoning. You shouldn't have apologized for having a political view that disagrees with other political views. You just had a video like 3 or 4 days earlier explaining to people how you don't have a good moral core, how you don't have a good understanding of how to react to other people, how you might either be autistic or sociopathic or maybe even psychopathic. I don't know how far you went in your self-diagnosis. And it was self-diagnosis. Like you're not diagnosed with any of this stuff. You're just simply explaining how hard it is for you to understand how other people feel, how you have trouble feeling empathy. And you have to mirror what other people feel. You just did a video explaining that. You could have used that in your defense of what you said and explain why you went too far in what you were saying. It's because you were in a feedback loop that made you feel like you were able to say things that you didn't actually believe because you thought that that's what people already agreed with. You could have done that instead of folding like a chair and saying, oops, I'm so sorry, this group isn't as bad as I said it was, and this other thing isn't. No, if you really are a sociopath or you really are autistic or whatever, if you really do have trouble with empathy, then you literally can only see facts. So the reason why you're right so many times is because you don't have emotions to cloud your judgment. If that's what you're really saying, and if that's even the case, because again, you're self-diagnosing and none of it could be true. You could be completely normal and you just think you're not normal. But you did a video just a few days before you said the stupid thing. You should have explained it. The dark triad.
Our fucking controversies and make us look bad. What do you think about the Twitch staff hating you in their Discord chat? I don't care. Really, I actually don't care. Some of this stuff was kind of out of pocket. It's a bit much, right? But I do think there's obviously like a huge conflict of interest there. When you have.
Oh, by the way, for those who watch my channel, did you guys see that someone, I'm going to say dunked on, but that's probably the wrong term, but someone demolished Adam and Stitch and Adam's podcast. They were going to do the Jubilee thing, which other people have done the Jubilee video. Amala, a few other TikTokers, YouTubers, streamers. What's her name? Brett Cooper, I think, has done it. And somehow when Adam and Stitch, or Stitch and Adam, tried to even start the video, before they even hit start, they got hit with a copyright and they got their stream cut off for trying to watch it. Wow.
Of people that are like actively going around negatively discussing creators that they're supposed to be making unbiased decisions on. But I think that it's been very clear that Twitch they do have a political bias. So the problem isn't that the rules aren't being applied. It's that some people don't get in trouble when other people do. I think moderation on Twitch, totally fucked. Totally fucked.
Okay, let's come back over here. All right. This is more because I just want to annoy Matt Fradd. And even if Matt Fradd never sees this, I know just by playing this, it bothers him. This doesn't just bother Matt Fradd. This also bothers Matt Walsh. It's funny. It's two different Matts. I don't like Matt Fradd. I'm not a fan. I don't like Matt Walsh. I'm more than not a fan of Matt Walsh. I really dislike Matt Walsh. That being said, I haven't seen the new movie that's out. I did watch the first one. I thought What is a Woman was interesting, was good. This new movie is probably going to be good. He's a good entertainer. Matt Fradd is a great content curator, a great content promoter. I just don't like the guy personally. Like, I don't like his views. When I say I don't like him personally, I don't mean I don't like him as an individual. I want him to get to heaven. I mean, I don't like his views. But here's my favorite thing. Not this image. This image. The Catholic Church is pro anime, and its mascot is a chibi. Take that, you anti-anime jerks.
I don't really know how to say this. The Catholic Church is preparing to celebrate what it refers to as a Jubilee year in 2025. And as part of this preparations, the Vatican has rolled out a brand new anime-inspired mascot, Luce. She's a pilgrim wearing traditional pilgrim garb, a muddy boots, a staff.
Hold on. Wait. Not only is it anime, not only is it a chibi, but it's a female. A female missionary anime character is a Catholic mascot. Come on. Tell me someone in the Vatican is not trying to like annoy Matt Fradd, Matt Walsh, Taylor Marshall. Tell me someone there is not aware of them and isn't like, you know what would kind of piss them off?
A missionary cross, look at that. The Vatican is turning to the power of anime. Welcome to 2024. What are the comments on this? They're turned off. The thing is that all things considered, I actually think this is pretty wholesome and kind of cute. Like, there's nothing that's like bad about it. It's not. No, I'm not going to look it up.
I'm not going to do the joke that he's going to do right there. But yeah, never look up certain things on that other one. Okay, let's go to Basecamp, and then we will go to then we'll go to the Ben Shapiro thing, and then we'll be done. Okay, so I want to play just a little bit of this because I found it extremely interesting. I thought this was great. Like I said, I think they're kind of wackadoo. I think they're grifting, but I don't care that they're grifting, and I don't care that they're wackadoo. If I was friends with them, which I'm not, if I knew them, which I don't, I think it would be really fun to go out for beers with these people because I think they'd talk. I don't think they would be silent and trying to pose or trying to be whatever. I think they would have like really interesting, dumb conversations, and I'd love that.
This is why.
Two different regions. Hello, Simone. This episode is definitely going to go in the best of category for Basecamp because it is a theory that I came to.
I still feel like they live in two different countries and they've never actually met. I know that's not the case. I know they're probably in the same house. I really do feel like they live in two different countries and they've never met each other in real life.
Which completely
and they're secretly brother and sister. The whole thing. Like there's so many conspiracies on these people that we can do.
Transforms how I see the history of humanity, and it is probably the single.
By the way, I've looked back at the older videos on this channel. I think this used to be her channel before he got involved. And she looks completely different before they're married or before they're doing this. So I think this look might be part of the gimmick to get people to watch. So I think they're actually trying to get people to be like, hey, wait, what's going on there? Because when she has dark hair and it's long and she's not wearing those glasses, she doesn't look as much like her husband as they do here.
Most offensive theory that we will air on this channel. If it becomes a mainstream theory, it will almost certainly always appear. Any video that shows it will have a little explanation at the bottom by like the UN or something about how this theory isn't accurate. Historically, I had this view that I think most people have, is that human civilization basically...
The only reason I really want to play this is because there's a few realizations that he has that I had a very long time ago. And it's when I was in my philosophical mode of like, oh, maybe everything is false, maybe everything is made up. And when you start looking into the historical data, everything that we have that's a manuscript, like everything that we have of the ancient world is actually a medieval manuscript. We don't have any original. We have nothing. We have fragments that may or may not coincide. And that's not, that's not completely true. Yeah, some of the fragments are more complete, whatever. But if you look at the oldest complete versions of anything, it's all from the medieval period. So everything could be made up. Which is that thing, like when everything's from like a different language, you don't know, you're trusting the translator. They could be bullshitting. They could be telling you a lie. And you're like, I guess this is true. And so when you, when you apply that lens, that cynical, critical, skeptical lens, and you look at when the ancient buildings and the ancient cultures existed, most of them are also from the medieval period. Most of the ancient cultures you can think of are from around 1200 to 1700 AD. Most of the ancient cultures are not ancient. I love that.
In a few different regions, and that you would have these periods of growth where sometimes one region would be ahead, other times another region would be ahead.
Totally. Yeah. Like, oh, China's the most cutting edge right now. And now it's Japan, and now it's Egypt, and whatever. Yes. Totally agree.
Yes. This theory posits.
Like when you think back on how long ago the Boxer Rebellion was, or how long ago the Shaolin Temple was, it's not as long ago as you think. They're going to get into that.
That view of history is mostly downstream of what I can only call the DEIification of the historical narrative. And that the vast majority of feats of civilization...
I'm wondering if she's actually hearing all this for the first time, or if he writes a script and then she edits it, or she writes a script and then he edits it and then they do this, but then she responds as if it's new information. It's all a lie. It's all fake. That's not even a building.
One civilization.
This is a blue screen, and that's a set.
Oh, no. And I'm worried.
Awkward. And it came to me when I was studying ancient Rome and ancient Greece recently, because I've been on a kick watching a number of videos on ancient Rome and Greece. And one thing really hit me as I was studying these periods. Whenever Rome would retreat from a region, and the Roman Empire would fall temporarily in a region, that region would fall back into a period of people essentially fighting over who had the nicest mud hut. Like, very little was happening in those regions during that period. And this includes the region that my ancestors were. Only when we were under Roman colonization during the period of the Roman Empire did we really do anything meaningful, civilizationally speaking.
Okay, so to be fair, you're not arguing that it's your own ancestors who were somehow superior from a culture.
Yes, not my own ancestors. My ancestors were mud hut people. For example, I am pretty much British, Irish, Scottish, English, the British Islands. You might say, well, come on, your ancestors must have produced something. Aren't there any great ruins in ancient British Isles? I was like, well, there's Unga Bunga, like Stonehenge. I wouldn't call that a great ruin. And they go, come on, there must be some great architecture in the British Isles. And I would say, actually, there is. In the 70s, 80s, there was this beautiful bath complex built in Bath. Where they're like, you see, the British can do something. I go, well, unfortunately, the Romans built that. And it was in a nowhere backwater of the Roman Empire. And Britain didn't build anything comparable for literally thousands of years. This was their equivalent of like a district, like sub-district that nobody cared about. But Now, you might be going through your head, what led me to this thought? So I was studying the Roman Empire, thinking of all these ruins, and then I started thinking, okay, but what about like the other civilizations of Earth during this period, right?
So this is the part that we're watching this for, what he's about to say right here. And then we'll jump on to Ben Shapiro and Matt Fradd, Ben Shapiro and Harris, and then we'll be done for the day.
Like, I've traveled all over the world. I've been to something, I think it's over 100 countries, like done a lot of travel.
I've been to Mexico, China, United States. So I've been to 3 countries.
And so I started thinking, okay, what were the other major civilizations? I was like, okay, you have Mesoamerica. Mesoamerica had great ruins, right?
Yes.
You got your Machu Picchu, for example.
Well, and ancient Mayan and Aztec ruins are extremely impressive.
Wait.
Right. But as anyone broadly knows, those ruins are fairly recent. Like Machu Picchu was built in the 15th century. And so, but I gave them I'm like, okay, that doesn't really count. They got their civilization started later. But there's also like India and China and Japan, right? Like they're all ancient civilizations. And I've been to these countries before. And I was like, okay, so when I was in Japan, I must have seen some ruins that had any sort of equivalency to even like Roman backwaters in like Spain and stuff. And I started thinking about it. And I was like, what? Okay, China. I've seen some hint that there was a civilization there. And then I was like, no. Oh, no. I have seen an East Asian ruin impressive at the Roman ruins. There was Angkor Wat, and in India, there was Hampi. And then I look up the dates of those ruins, the 15th and the 14th century. Those ruins were built. Angkor Wat was built when King's College Chapel was being built in Cambridge.
There's a really good meme that shows ancient buildings and then a semi quote unquote modern building, and then it shows that on the timeline they're actually built at the exact same time. That's a good meme. I've seen that a few times.
36. Like they were built incredibly recently. And so then I was like, okay. But
Egypt.
I consider Egypt to be the ancestor of Greek civilization. So it's one line.
Yeah. So if you read Herodotus and a few other ancient Greek, I'm going to call them historians, they all believe that Egypt is their ancestor. So Egypt begets Greek culture begets Roman culture begets European culture. Is basically the argument. European culture begets British culture, British English culture begets U.S. culture, et cetera.
Of civilization. The Greeks considered Egypt to be the ancestor of their civilization.
And by the way, that's the same way it works in Asia. Almost all the civilizations date back to something in China, and then China dates back to who knows what because the history is so muddled. But yeah.
Did they really?
In Greek literature, they would say,
but you'll have a lot of Mongol, Genghis Khan influence.
oh, we got our civilization from Egypt. Yeah, they're always borrowing from Egypt. So basically,
but again, that time period is not as far back as you think it is. That's the 1400s. That's not 1000 BC. So you have a lot. The fact that Judaism, that you have ancient Israeli culture, you have ancient Phoenician culture, that you have ancient and Phoenicia, Carthage is the competitor to Rome, by the way. But they also have influence from Egypt, and Israel has influence from Egypt. And then you also have ancient Sumerian, which you can say has roots from Assyrian, which you can say has roots from Babylonian. I might have that a little bit out of order. But yeah, so you have all these cultures that date back to one singular culture, and then it gets like assimilated by another great culture, and then that becomes a new great culture. Yeah. So like, again, with my Bible theory, this is also the same thing. There's actually a theme here. So ideology, theology, philosophy are all subject to evolutionary pressures. Civilization, the same thing. So you have all these minor civilizations that form into one great civilization. That's why you need to have the warring state periods in different times. You need to have Sargon of Akkad fighting different groups and assimilating those groups. You need to have Alexander fighting different groups and assimilating. Conquering and eliminating does not work because then you don't have growth and you don't have a new megaculture. You need to compress. You need to have a super compressed culture, a kind of a super assimilated culture, and then that becomes a new mega culture that can assimilate and absorb other cultures into it, until it absorbs so many that it's no longer its original culture, and then it falls and collapses. But that's a different thing. So you have these mega cultures that have all the good things of one culture and of different cultures into one new culture. And that's amazing. And that's what Rome represents when it starts conquering other nations and bringing their gods into their pantheon. So it's really cool stuff. And that has to do with the evolution of civilization. So just like the biblical text, just like religious text, you end up having one super text. You're going to have one super culture. And the culture will change over time. So the idea here is that the mind virus, the cultural evolutionary gene or germ, is coming from ancient Egypt. There's another one that starts off in, I don't know, what is it, Tepe or something like that, or Babylon. So maybe there's a little bit more truth to the Adam and Eve story than you realize. So you have Babylon, you have whatever's going on there in that little fertile crescent, and then you have a different one in Rome, and you have these like different like seeds, plants germinating and turning into one new plant, and then cross pollinating and birthing a new culture, a new mega culture, a new superculture.
Single line of civilization that I can track goes Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, and Greece really takes over the flame from Egypt, and then Rome takes over the flame from Greece, and then Charlemagne takes over the flame from Rome, and then Charlemagne's kingdom splits into the various distinct sort of warring kingdoms that take over the flame from that, and then the flame is taken over by the British Empire, and then it's sort of seeded around the world. But
and I agree almost with, even though I don't like what he's saying, I agree with almost everything that he's saying here.
To get back to the story here, I was like, okay, but works of literature, right?
Okay, so he's going to get into that.
I have heard about all of these great works of literature by totally disconnected cultures. Like, for
Okay, I'm a little bit, I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll do you guys want to do the Ben Shapiro thing, or you guys want to call it a night? I'm going to let you guys, let me know. Put a 1 for Ben Shapiro, Sam Harris. Put a 2 for call it a night. I'm going to get some water. I'll be right back. I got to stretch my legs. So what are we doing? Are we going to do one more video, or do you guys want to call it a night?
For example, the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, or the Journey to the West. Did you know when these were written? Romance of the Three Kingdoms was written in the 14th century. Journey to the West was written in the 16th century.
This is true.
I was like, okay, well, what about like a water martyrdom, also known as Outlaws of the Marsh, or Dream of the Red Chamber, right?
I've never
the
heard of
14th and
these.
the 18th century, respectively. To
Okay.
give you an idea of how late these were written, to works of literature that I can consider just like, as somebody who's read translated works of literature, and I'm just like, this one grabs me, these two don't.
Well, how about
Dante's
the Tales
Divine
of-
Comedy was started writing it in 1308, and he finished writing it in 1320, hundreds of years before any of these works.
How about the Tales of Genji? The Tales of Genji. That's Japan, and that was
From the Free Press, this is Honestly, and I'm Barry Weiss. There are no perfect political candidates, but what do you do when both candidates are not just imperfect, but deeply flawed and, according to half of the country, disqualified?
And I think that is completely true. I unjokingly, although some people might have thought it was a joke, said that I was talking to Christians on my Twitter. I was like, what Kamala Harris said about Christians and was doing about Christians who were supporting her shows that she doesn't want us to vote for her. So don't vote for her. But if you can't vote for Trump, write in your favorite apologist. That's what I said to do. So write in Trent Horn or Gavin Ortland or whatever it is, but don't support someone who's telling us that we're not worthy of supporting her. Don't do it. And I think I think this might be the first time in history that if you look at the lower edge of the United States, which includes where I live, even though we talk Republican, we're all Democrat. Like every year there's an election from Brownsville, which I believe is Starr County, all the way to New Mexico, maybe Southern California. It's all blue. All the counties vote blue. So it would be interesting if what she said against Hispanics and what she said against Christians loses her the southern counties of the United States, the border counties of the United States. That would be, I think it might be the first time in history that they would turn red, because these have been blue almost my entire life.
He says, "You're not going to be a dictator, are you?" I said, "No, no, no, other than day one."
You were a very staunch defender of President Biden's capacity to serve.
You're voting for and why? Sam, let's start with you.
Well, I think it's no secret at this point that I'm not a fan of Donald Trump's. And I'm voting for Harris. I would, the truth is, I would vote for almost anyone over Trump, right? So a lot of this conversation is going to be talking about.
I think the fact that he admits that, and the fact that it's clear, it's good that he admits it because it's so clear that it would hurt him if he didn't admit it. But I think the fact that he has to admit it really hurts his argument against Trump.
Why I think Trump has disqualified himself for the role of president, and I'm happy to talk about Harris as well. But I mean that really is the whole story for me. I mean, this is
and I haven't really talked about this much on this channel, but I think we're in a situation that we can't get out of. I did not think Trump was going to win. I thought everybody could see that he was playing a character. If you watch the new series of Vince McMahon on Netflix, watch that series, that documentary. They talk about creating the character of Trump. They talk about how how he's a wrestler, how he's playing a character he's playing the character of Donald Trump, or he's playing the character of Trump. He's not actually Donald when he's out on the campaign trail or in the office. He's still playing that same wrestling character he played in the WWE. So that's acknowledged. I don't think that electing him the first time was wise. And the fact that we did that put us in the situation we are in now. So I don't think you have the terrible presidency of Biden if you don't have the terrible decision to vote Trump into office happening, being realized. But I don't like Kamala. I don't like Biden. I don't like Trump. I'm a voter. So who am I going to vote for? And I've said this before, which is I'm voting based on what I care about. I'm a Catholic. I'm pro-religion. I'm pro-free speech. I'm pro-gun. I'm pro-gun rights. I have swords, even though those aren't guns. I do have, I have legitimate real swords, not the stuff you get at a mall. I have 3 $1,000 swords. Like,
I would be voting against Trump with more or less anyone, because what I want really is normal politics, right? I mean, the fact that politics has taken up so much of our bandwidth of late, for 8 years, 9 years at this point, is a sign that something's wrong, right? And Trump is at the very center of that. So nothing I say in this conversation is going to come out of a feeling of my own partisanship. I happen to be registered as a Democrat, but I would vote for Mitt Romney.
In Texas, you don't have to register as a Republican or a Democrat. You're just a registered voter.
At this point, I would campaign for Mitt Romney. I mean, a normal Republican would be absolutely fine with me. So most of what I have to say really has nothing to do with policy, even. Trump has announced some policies that I would disagree with, and we can talk about those. But the real issue for me is that Trump is the most divisive political figure to appear in my lifetime. And, we should get into the reasons for that.
That's a lie. Bush was hated. I was alive for when Bush was being hated. The stuff that people were saying about Bush was insane. The second Bush. He was absolutely hated, and Cheney was absolutely hated. And the stuff that people were saying against Obama was absolutely insane. So, no, this is it. Oh, Trump's not the most hated politician of all time, or the most lied about politician of all time, or the most controversial politician of all time. People absolutely hated President Bush, and people absolutely hated Obama. Both of which I voted for both men, and I liked both candidates. I voted. I've said my voting record before on here. I voted for Bush, the son. I voted for McCain. I voted for Obama. I voted for Stein. Like that's my voting record.
For that, but whatever you think of Trump, right? Even if you think he's great, you really can't deny that he brings out the worst in us, right? He brings out the worst in both his friends and his enemies. And Brett Stevens wrote a piece on this recently.
Yeah, but he also brings out the worst in you, Sam Harris, and that's part of the problem. Let's get to Ben. Okay. There we go.
Ben, let's go to you.
Sure,
Obviously,
so
you're not voting for Kamala Harris.
You may have noticed, yes. So obviously, I'm coming at this from precisely the opposite point of view. I've given money to President Trump. I've campaigned with President Trump. I brought President Trump to Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson's Ohel on October 7th, where he met with hostage families. So I'm very involved in this campaign. So I'm going to use a bit of a different model. I think that Sam is coming from the point of view that Trump is preemptively disqualified from the race. Just period, start to finish, we're done. And that ends the calculation. For me, the question is, were you better off in 2019 or are you better off in 2024? And the way that I view this political race is that basically you have this strainer that is American politics. That's the political system. And that involves the constitutional checks and balances. It involves the back and forth of politics. It involves the rhetoric. And what goes into the strainer is what the candidate brings to the table. And very often that's rhetoric, that's policy, that's staffing. That's all the mess that whatever candidate brings. And they stuff all of that stuff, that entire cholent, into the strainer. And what comes out the other end of the strainer is the thing that I'm adjudicating based upon. And after the strainer in 2019, what I got was a solid economy, the best foreign policy of my lifetime, a president whose rhetoric I very often didn't like, but who had made the country stronger in a variety of ways. And as of 2024, what I see is an administration, and Kamala Harris is the vice president of that administration, who I believe actually probably has a constitutional duty to get rid of the person above her, who that administration has produced a world that is on fire in a myriad of ways, has produced 40-year highs in inflation, has not, in fact, calmed the waters. I know Sam was talking about.
And I think inflation is what's going to lose Kamala the election. I don't think it's anything else. So she's a bad politician. Donald Trump is the worst politician of all time. Who cares? It's the inflation. It's the fact that the administration or the people currently in office or whatever you want to say, mathematical probability, pressures of the economic world, pressures of COVID and the lockdown, whatever consequences you want to say, where the consequences stem from. The point is that most of us can't afford groceries. I know people who are millionaires who are eating McDonald's value menu because they can't afford to go out to eat. I know poor people who are going out to eat because the amount of money it costs for groceries and the amount of money it costs to eat out is now the same. So the inflation alone is going to lose Kamala the election. So if she wins, it's because people understand the dangers of Donald Trump. And if she loses, it's not because Donald Trump is a great candidate, it's because people can't afford food.
About normalcy, the reality is that Donald Trump has not been president for the last 3.5 years. And not only have we not returned to normalcy, things seem to have gotten significantly worse. In fact, if we were going to sort of describe Donald Trump's role in American politics, I think that one of the differences between Sam and me is that Sam would sort of declare Donald Trump the murderer of American politics, where I would see Donald Trump more as the coroner of American politics, that things were...
I don't think he's the coroner or the murderer. I think he's the result of maybe 30 years, 40 years of bad politics. That's what I think. I think after the death of Kennedy, the politicians that came out of that were junk. And I think these junk politicians and bad policies and bad politics, I think the lessons the Democratic Party learned were the wrong lessons over and over and over again. And now we have complete insanity and wannabe fake anarchy. You can't rebel. You can't call yourself the rebel when you are the system, when you are the man. Right now, the cool kids are the Republicans, and I never thought that they would come. I never thought the rebels would be the Republicans. You can't have conservatism be the rebel party. Like that makes no sense. The fact that the world has twisted and turned so far that way is not good.
Really, really bad before Donald Trump actually entered the American political scene, which is how he became president of the United States in the first place. And Donald Trump simply being defeated would not make any of that go away because, frankly, it didn't in 2020. And so the calculation for me...
I'm not going to say about 2020, but I will say that is correct. His first part of that statement is correct. The problem isn't Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a result of the problem. The problem is not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the result of the problem. He is the consequence of the problem. Okay, let's go to 20. We're gonna jump around either 5-minute or 10-minute marks, depending on what's going on in the conversation.
And who stood by as they were calling for the hanging of his vice president. He just stood by tweeting narcissistic bullshit. And he would later record a song with some of the worst offenders, right? There's 20 of them in prison singing on jailhouse telephones. He recorded his own track on this song, and he plays it at his rallies, right? If I told you would support such a person, you, Ben, right, you with your commitment to morality, right, and religious principles and public probity and ethics, I don't think you would believe me. But that's where we are, right? That's
the fact that Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Jordan Peterson, there's 2 other guys, have all hurt their credibility on the world stage. Means that conversations like these don't matter. And I was thinking about this before I decided to put this on today's stream, before I picked this one of the videos for today, which is the presidential debates were pointless. The presidential debate against Biden really only showed that Biden shouldn't be president. The presidential debate between Kamala and Trump was pointless. We all know Trump's a liar, and he lied. We all know that Kamala Harris is a bad candidate, and she can't play fast and loose on the field. She's not a good on-field tactician. Maybe she's good behind the scenes, but at least on the field, in the moment of play, she's not a good tactician. And so we saw that. Some people say that makes her incompetent for the presidency. I'm not going to go that far, but that is one of her problems, one of her drawbacks, right? I saw more presidential elements in the vice president debate. I thought Vance versus Waltz was a great debate. That looked like a classical political debate. I think this debate is better than the debate that the presidents had. I think the candidates for president should be Ben Shapiro, should be Vance, J.D. Vance as the president and Ben Shapiro as vice president, and it should be Waltz as the president and Sam Harris as the vice president. That should be who's running for president, not the people that we have running right now.
That's how fully Trump has distorted our politics.
So a couple things. So there are a couple of arguments. There's one you made early, and then you sort of morphed it into the second argument about character, which I'll get to in a moment. So there was the first argument, which was, you're taking Trump seriously, but not literally. Why can't we do the same with Kamala? So let's do that. Let's take her seriously, but not literally when it comes to many of her policy prescriptions. Well, seriously, but not literally for Trump on immigration. Looks like he's not going to deport 12 million people by caging up entire families in concentration camps. It looks like term number 1. In which
I think that's the other thing that's hurting Kamala's chances of winning. The rhetoric against Trump is too far to the insanity. I live on the border. I know what it's like to have illegal immigrants cross through my friends' backyards. Like, that literally happens. I know what it's like to have to deal with crime on the border. I live here. So that's real. That's not a fictitious Republican talking point. I know what it's like to have illegal immigrants as classmates because they were my classmates. I know what it's like to see someone struggle to get their legal paperwork. I know what it's like to see someone wait for years to become an American citizen because my wife is going through that right now. She is a Chinese citizen trying to become an American. Okay, so this is stuff that I really actually know substantially, personally. The rhetoric against Trump is what's hurting Kamala's chance of being elected president. You can't go that far into the rhetoric, into the propaganda, and have people who are centrist, in the middle, undecided, vote for your side. There was a theory that the reason why Trump won was because of Fox News, and I think that's a stupid theory. Let me tell you what I think is, though, going to happen. I think Kamala is going to lose because of MSNBC and CNN and ABC. The media interference with her candidacy, their influence they have over her, and the influence they have over the voting population, when they try to help out Kamala in a debate, and it's obvious to everyone, when they do stuff like they do what they did with the Chyron at the rally that happened at Madison Square Garden, you're losing voters. You're not scaring people into hating Trump. You're making people not believe you as a source. You're hurting your credibility, just as Sam Harris has hurt its credibility, just as Jordan Peterson has hurt his credibility, just as Richard Dawkins has hurt his credibility. Your public stock has gone down because of your unwillingness to compromise, your unwillingness to admit when you're wrong, and your unwillingness to be charitable. Because you're being such a-holes, you're losing the election for a candidate that might be a fine candidate. We don't know. She hasn't said anything substantive. She's just said word salad and messed up a lot. And she's been a vice president. She hasn't been in charge. So we don't know. And you running cover for her makes it way worse. She might actually be a good president, and we won't know because you're attacking Trump with propaganda. I don't like propaganda in apologetics. I don't like propaganda in my religion. I don't like propaganda in my politics. Shut the F up and let the candidates speak for themselves. Yeah, I agree with you, BS. I wouldn't call it blatant cheating, but I would call it the willingness to cheat for her is a turnoff. I just think that's really stupid. Because I think Donald Trump's an idiot. She could have beat him on her own without the help of ABC.
He puts back in place, for example, Remain in Mexico, in which he has a proper interpretation of.
You think Donald Trump is well read? You think he reads books?
What asylum law looks like, in which we properly allocate resources for Border Patrol. I've been down to the border. They're completely misallocated under the Biden administration, as Border Patrol itself will tell you. And then you look at the status quo that Kamala Harris has presented, which was.
Yeah, the Border Patrol does not like Biden at all, and they're open about it.
Effectively for 3.5 years an open border. And so that would be taking them seriously, but not literally. We look at the records, not just what they say, which was sort of my original model, is look at what they do, not just what they say. Then there is the sort of characterological argument that you're making about Donald Trump. And again, I think that the same could be true in reverse. If I had told you, Sam Harris, a few years ago, that you'd be supporting a candidate who says that men can be women, for example, or a candidate who has openly campaigned with, say, Mark Ruffalo, who has compared Israel to the Nazi state, or that you would be supporting a candidate whose first action in office, apparently, according to the New York Times about 3 days ago, was to examine intelligence reports for gendered language with regard to America's foreign adversaries who are female. You'd be surprised, too. I guess all this is to say that we've entered a magically different world, for better or for worse. I think in many ways for worse, and I think you'd probably agree on that. But that world exists. And so now you're faced with a binary choice between candidates, and that binary choice cannot be avoided. I mean, the question, I guess, on a characterological, I won't even say that.
So we're choosing between a turd sandwich and a shit sandwich. We're choosing between horse shit and bullshit. It's not good. It's not good.
It doesn't exist on both sides.
That's not true. I mean, if Donald Trump wins this election, I promise you will see elections denialism on the left that is incredibly similar to what you've seen from Donald Trump.
I wanted to ask you that.
And again, this is part of the problem with the commodification of political bias. So you have people like Sam Cedar and other people like that who are saying really stupid things on YouTube. And this can be used against the Democrats because you're saying stuff that is wholly untrue and wholly unreasonable. When you're accusing Trump of doing things that he didn't do, or you're accusing his followers, you're accusing black men, Hispanics, and Jewish people of being Nazis. I'm not going to say the other word because I am trying to get monetization. But once you're doing that, you've lost credibility. You've now given ammunition for an idiot like Trump to say, look what the left is saying. Look what they're saying about me. Look, they're lying to you. Yeah, those 4 idiots are lying. But because those are the most popular voices on the left or the far left, or whatever you want to call it, that makes it sound like it's legitimate. And that is a problem. But it doesn't help when mainstream media then repeats their nonsense.
Question for you. I'm not going to filibuster, but I just want to ask you. If on election day we have a clear result, right? So there's a landslide in the swing states and someone really wins, right? If I told you that the losing candidate denied the results of the election and simply would not accept
something that
I would say that's either side. Either side is going to do that. Both sides are going to do that. It doesn't matter.
Understood quite well, which is why he was able to achieve the best record in the Middle East of any president in my lifetime, while the pseudo-sophistication of the Biden-Harris administration has achieved.
And for those that don't know, I have an ear toward China. My wife is Chinese. My family is Chinese. Not my family, but like the people I married into. They love Trump. They love Trump over there. The media loves Trump. The people there love Trump. The stories that are run about Trump are mostly positive. Yes, making fun of him, but they love him. So, yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't know. So Trump and China, they like each other. You might not get that from the American reporting on the issue. But yeah, it's in actuality, if you actually listen to their media and you read so the way that Chinese news works is kind of interesting. It kind of spreads virally. So they have their own internet system. They have their own stuff. And if you don't have access to Chinese media, you wouldn't know. And basically through WeChat, they spread articles around. And yes, it's always with a bit of humor. They make fun of the West. But it's always positive when it comes to Trump. The end is positive. So it's something to think about. Like, don't believe what our media is saying about about what other cultures' view on Trump is. It's BS. A few years ago, back when cable was good, I used to love watching. I had 4 channels on my favorites, and it was MSNBC, Fox News, CNN. I'm sorry, 5 channels: CNN, BBC, and Australian. I think it was Australian News One or World News, and I would watch all of them. And then at night they would have special bonus programs. They would have a broadcast from China. They would a broadcast from Hong Kong, and a broadcast from Japan, and a broadcast from Russia, and that's what I would listen to at night. And so the way that I would get my politics is I would listen to the Russian view, the Chinese view, the Australian view, the Canadian view. I love the Canadian news channel before Trudeau took over Canada. And I would listen to what the world media was saying about an American story. And then I would go back to the American sources. I would go back to like CNN or MSNBC, and I'd try to hear what the difference was between the international viewpoint and our viewpoint. And that was fun because it was a completely different take on the same story. Unfortunately, with the way that the news is now set up, you can't really do that anymore. But you can still get that a little bit on YouTube until people start making it to where you can only get YouTubers that are from America and Australia from Australia. Until that happens, which I think is going to come, and I think that's unfortunate. It's really awesome to hear other people's points of view. Yeah, Santiago, you have. Well, I mean, I guess we're both Hispanic, so yeah, I guess you do know, but you have no idea how right you are. Mexicans, I know so many Mexicans that love Trump. And when I say Mexicans, I don't mean like American Hispanics. I mean Mexicanos. They love Trump. They think he's like the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Achieved the most massive conflagration in the Middle East in my lifetime.
The more anglicized Hispanics hate him, by the way. which is an interesting little tweak. But the more Mexicans that I talk to, oh my gosh, they love that dude. Yeah, let's go forward.
It should never have been read, given the context of her other remarks about the American people. It shouldn't be read as demonizing half the country in the way that Trump regularly demonizes people in this country. I mean, he's talked about using the military against not just protesters, like in the BLM protest.
He's joked about it, and again, Trump's statements are not politically correct, and we have a politically incorrect candidate.
Who he thought should be shot in the leg.
Okay, I'm going to go 5 more minutes, then I'm going to do my outro, guys. And Trump saying inappropriate things is not surprising. That's why he probably shouldn't have been a candidate in the first place. Boy, I mean, Thomas says Trump is kind of entertaining. He's like a really strange comic book character. He's literally playing a character. That's what almost everybody doesn't get. I think this time around, and Ben Shapiro is right on this, if you go watch the whole interview, this time around, there's been more actual Trump, or whatever you want to say it's a character, but there's been more human Trump than the character Trump. When he ran the first time, he was running as half the candidate. He was running as half the character he played on WWE and half the character he played on The Apprentice. He wasn't running as a real human being, and he won. That's insane. Yeah, it does help that Santiago says it also helps that Republicans are more concerned with cartels than the Democrats. Yeah. For those that don't know the situation in Mexico, I have friends who live on the Mexican side. I have friends who live on this side who go to work on the Mexican side. I have friends who go travel to visit their family, like travel by car. You get to a toll, or you get to a checkpoint, and it's not the Mexican military, it's not the Mexican police, it's the cartels. You have to pay the cartels a toll to drive safely to get to where you're trying to go. So if you're trying to get to Mexico City, forget about it. You better fly in. You go into Reynosa, you go into Matamoros, and you deal with these situations. Yeah, you have the American checkpoint on our side, but once you get into the interior, it's cartel run. So if you don't understand that, you're not paying attention and you don't know the situation here on our border.
Trump derangement syndrome is to think that his flaws in his character, perhaps his dishonesty above all, don't matter, right? That's
what I don't like here is that I think it's dishonest that Sam Harris is acting like, oh, well, Trump is so dishonest. Every politician you've ever talked to has lied to you. Every politician that has ever held office has lied to you. Every single one. What are you talking about, man? Like, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. Okay, we're gonna stop over here at 1 at this point. I'm gonna play this point, whatever they say they're gonna say. When it gets done, I'm gonna switch to the big screen, and then we'll do the outro.
The process is over, right? He's the candidate, so we got to make the best of it, and we got to figure out, how to get him in front of the camera at the right hour of the day, so that he doesn't look like he's going to fall asleep. And that I could imagine.
This is such cope, by the way, on Biden.
Was one long emergency, or it certainly became one at the end of at the end of his campaign. And the debate, what the debate did is made the entire country realize, all right, this is totally unsustainable. But it's not the same thing as knowing that this is a weekend at Bernie's presidency, and there's no.
Just to be very clear, my dad has Alzheimer's or dementia or whatever you want to call it. Every time I saw Biden, he was acting like my dad. So I'm sorry, it was very obvious to me. You can argue Trump takes it to the extreme when it comes to the lying. I think his lying is funny. I don't mean this like in a political sense. I mean, the way that he lies, I think, is very funny. I know people who lie like that. I was a car salesman for a long time. I'm still in a tangentially related sales business. I know people who talk like that, who BS like that. And I don't think it's lying. I think it's BSing, which is the same as lying. I want to be very clear. But if you want to be semantics, you want to talk about semantics on it, he's not lying to lie. He's lying to BS. He's lying so you like him, which maybe that's worse. Maybe Sam Harris is correct on that, but it's more entertaining. It is entertaining. Like, I don't know anybody who watched his, and I mean in real life, I don't talking about online. I don't know anybody in real life who saw his blatant lies during the debate with Kamala and were offended. They all laughed. They're all like, they found it silly. They found it like, oh yeah, of course he's going to say that about himself. When Kamala lied and said, oh, there's no active troops, there's no troops in harm's way or in active duty anywhere in or in a war zone. And then you just had troops responding back like, well, then where are we? Like, what are we doing here? Like, that's a bad lie. And I think Trump knows how to tell a good lie. I don't mean a good lie as in morally good. I mean as in an entertaining lie. Trump knows how to BS. Like, he's an expert in BS. He knows how to make it sound good. He knows how to make it funny. He knows how to make you go, okay, like I'll let you get away with it. Yeah, maybe that's slimy, maybe that's sleazy, but that's no worse than any other politician lying. It's just more entertaining. And the fact that people are willing to vote for entertainment over a leader, that's terrible. That's the tragedy. The tragedy is not that Trump's a liar, because all politicians are liars. The tragedy is that people are willing to vote for an entertaining liar because they're tired of the lies. That the lying's so bad that they'd rather take an entertaining liar over a regular liar. They'd rather take a con man over a bad liar. Over a dishonest person. Like, think about that. That's how bad politics have gotten here in the U.S., where a con man is preferable because he's funny and entertaining. Because the other person's lying to you straight to your face. They're bold-faced lying to you, and they're doing it cold. Hey! For those that don't know, a celebrity has come into our room. The most beautiful, the most lovely, the most buzzworthy Hive Science. Hi, Cy. How's it going? I watched your thing, your crypto thing recently. It was really good. Not the one where you're in the nun costume. The one before that.
No one in the Oval Office, and the country's being governed by functionaries whose names we don't know. Right? That's not that is not plausible to me. But yes, I think it would be good to have a younger president. There's no question.
But for the people who say, just to follow up on one aspect of that question, who say, I would have loved an alternative to Donald Trump. I would love to have voted in an open primary for someone that I preferred rather than have been.
I mean, I don't know if he's confused so much as he's really old. And I don't know too many old people that can hold their BS together for that long. So, but yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
Sort of have Kamala Harris foisted upon me. Do you think that's a legitimate gripe? Or you think it's legitimate, but just who cares in relationship to Trump?
It's a completely legitimate preference. It would have been my preference. I think we would have a stronger candidate. I think Kamala herself would be a stronger candidate now if she'd gone through that.
By the way, Bree, thank you for joining. I appreciate it.
Process. I mean, one of the things she's suffering is just the fact that she had to hit the ground running at 1,000 miles an hour, and we're witnessing all the kinks in her campaign get worked out when a campaign should be closing the deal, right? So
whenever we hear about the threat of Trump,
but again, that goes back to Trump. Trump knows how to close a deal. Like, if nothing else, Trump is a salesman. Whether you want to say that's his character or the actual guy, he is a salesman.
I hear from the right too. You'll hear from the right the sort of statement, this is the last election. And I've ripped on it when the right says this. I don't like this. I don't like when Trump says it. I don't like when any politician suggests.
I agree. I don't like the end times talk. I think that raises up the temperature way too high. And in this election, all the rhetoric is way too high.
I mean,
last election.
Elon Musk is saying that every single day right
And
now.
I don't like when Elon says that. I think that's wrong. I don't think that this is the end of the republic if Kamala Harris wins the election. I think that if Kamala
Yes. Brees, Hivesai says the Biden-Trump debate sounded like an argument at a nursing home. Agreed.
Harris wins, then people on my side of the aisle need to go back to the drawing board and figure out new strategies on how to thwart whatever her agenda is. But because...
Okay, I'm going to go a little bit longer just because I love that Bree showed up, so I'm going to keep going a little bit more. But when it hits the 2-hour mark, guys, I have to cut it off. I work in the morning, and I still have to work out tonight.
My view of American politics is that it will continue and the institutions are durable. That means that my choice really becomes about who do I think is going to best function inside those durable guardrails that are most likely going to hold back most of the excesses, if not all of the excesses, of the candidates, and who is going to be more professional in manipulating those guardrails. And I think that Trump's amateurism...
And now, I know that he's saying that Trump's amateurism is a selling point, but I think Trump is a master manipulator. I think what he is a master manipulator. I think he's a legitimate con man, if that makes any sense.
And lack of professionalism when it comes to manipulating those guardrails, in some ways, is a point in his favor, as opposed to the professionalism of the Democratic Party on this sort of stuff.
Well, speaking of jabbering on, I find Kamala to be a fascinating candidate because it feels sometimes like she's being scripted by Armando Iannucci. I just want to read two things that she has said recently. She was at a town hall with Anderson Cooper, and he asked, how can we differentiate your policy beliefs from Biden's? Not exactly a difficult question. This is what she said. Well, there's...
If they play the clip, I'm going to mute it just because I don't want to get a copyright claim.
A lot that was done, but there's more to do, Anderson, and I am pointing out things that need to be done but haven't been done.
Well, I don't know if you've watched any of my channel recently in the last 4 weeks, Bree, but I broke my foot. So next week is supposed to be the day I'm supposed to start exercising, but I had lost all the weight that I had as a salesman. I lost all of it. I sent pictures. Me and my wife are separated right now, and I sent pictures to her, and she was like, "Oh, you look sexy. That's the husband that I want." And I was like, "Oh, all right." And then I literally the day after I sent her those photos, I broke my foot, and so for the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks, I haven't been able to do any heavy workout. I can't heavy lift. I can't do any squats or deadlifting. I can't do calf races. I can't go running. All I've been doing is bike riding. So I've been gaining just a little bit of weight back, and I'm just like, oh, like I worked so hard. I worked 6 months to get rid of all that weight, and then one bad meal, and I have to start off all over again. It's so unfair.
But need to be done. I could do a dozen of these right now. And, when you have, a Democratic grandee like David Axelrod, not exactly a simp for Donald Trump, getting on television and accusing his candidate of going to word salad city, you kind of can come to understand why some people are choosing the comprehensible bullshit of Trump over the incomprehensible Kamala Harris.
And I think that's absolutely correct. I think what Barry Wise, is this Barry Wise? Is that, who are we watching right now? I think it's Barry Wise. What she just said is completely correct. The people who I talk to, because I'm still keeping my, for those that don't know, I might go back into sales after January. I haven't decided. I haven't decided if I'm going to go corporate again, but I'm tempted to. If I go back to being corporate, I'm keeping my sales book alive. So I'm keeping communication with my customers. No. I wish it was doing something silly. I've been skateboarding. Bree, I'm a 44-year-old man, and I've been skateboarding. I was getting all the way around my neighborhood on the skateboard. It was fun. I was doing both the right foot and the left foot. So I was doing a total of 30 minutes, like 15 minutes on with one foot as my back foot, and then 15 minutes with the other foot as my back foot. I've been doing switch. It was fun. No, I was late for work and I had to feed the cats and I wasn't paying attention. And the night before I had been weightlifting, arm curling, 45-pound dumbbell. And I was so tired after the workout, I had put it in the, right next to the cat bowl. So I'm going to feed my cat and I turn the wrong way and I'm walking too fast and I smash my foot into the 45-pound weight. And I break, like the shell of the toe breaks off. Not just the bone, the shell broke off, the thing. Although the X-ray of my foot was because I put it back together myself because the bleeding and all that stuff was just getting too much and the pain was getting too intense. So I put it back together, and they were checking to see if I did any damage by putting it back together. And they said they were amazed at the spacing of my foot. And I said, well, I'm a martial artist. I've been doing martial arts since I was like 13. And they're like, oh man, that's amazing. Your foot shows no wear from that. So yeah, so apparently at least I'm kicking correctly. That's unrelated to anything we're talking about, but yeah.
At least that's, you know, when I'm listening to her, I'm like, what is this person actually standing for? What is she actually saying? What is the positive vision here beyond I'm not Donald Trump? And maybe I'm not Donald Trump is enough for a lot of people. But I'm watching her obsessively.
I'm left cold by Kamala, to be honest about it. I'm left cold. And she's too, when you look at her old belief systems and her current policies, and then the way that her policies have even shifted from when she was a candidate versus to when she was vice president, it makes her untrustworthy. And you need to have a bastion of truth. You need a truth sayer. You need a blunt, bold truth sayer to be the antidote to Trump's lies. You can't counter Trump's lies with lies or moral compromises. The way to counter Trump as a good candidate is with truth, with absolute truth and absolute confidence, even if it's an ugly truth or something that hurts your candidacy for the moment. It'll help you overall, because by showing that you're going to be honest, you're going to take responsibility for your mistakes. Like, I think one of the worst answers she gave is when they asked her to admit a mistake that she's made, and instead she says it would be a mistake not to answer. Like, it's like, no, dude, don't turn this into a self-congratulating you-know-what. No, you need to not do autofellatio on yourself on screen. You need to freaking, be blunt and say, like, look, this is where I've messed up in the past. This is where I was wrong in the past. But I'm not Donald Trump. I can admit my flaws. And I promise you, going forward, I will make sure not to do this. And instead, I will do this. And I will make sure this is true, not just for me, but for my entire administration. Yeah, I've been wrong on border security. Yeah, in the past, I've been wrong on trans issues. But you know what? Going forward, it doesn't matter what I said 10 years ago. It matters what I say today and what I do going forward. And today I'm going to protect, blah, 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 blah. That's what she should have done. Owned up to her politicians. Own up to her politicizing? No. Was it? Anyway, own up to her being a politician. Own up to the fact that she said stuff that wasn't true to get elected before. And say, I'm not going to do that again. I'm here for you. But instead, it was, I'm not going to admit a personal flaw. Well, congratulations. You're Rey from Star Wars, and no one's going to vote for you because no one liked the Star Wars movies because of the Mary Sue problem. No one's going to like you because of the Mary Sue problem. Don't do that. Don't try to out-Trump Trump. Don't try to out-con a con man. Don't try to out-lie a liar. The antidote to a lie is truth. The antidote to a con man is honesty and straightforwardness and bluntness. Don't play Trump's game.
Looking for that positive vision, and I'm not seeing it. And Sam, even in the beginning of this conversation, I asked you, why are you voting for Harris? And the answer amounted to, because she's not Donald Trump, which I get. But help me see, what is the positive vision there beyond the fact that she's not him?
Yeah, well, as I said, not him is really enough, and it should be enough, because again, for me, it all falls out of the big lie and not committing to a peaceful transfer of power. I mean, that is so destructive of the health of our democracy that I just think there's nothing else need to be said, right? And I wonder if not that, what Trump could do that would disqualify him in Ben's eyes, right? I mean, perhaps Ben could tell us, but for me, that's more than enough.
If he used SEAL Team 6 to kill his political opponents, I think that'd probably disqualify him.
Well, here's something that might be disqualifying that has not yet come up in this conversation. January 6th happened 4 days after Trump called the Georgia Secretary of State to say, I just want to find 11,780
We'll
votes.
finish this thought, and then we're going to call it a night, guys.
Let me repeat that. I just want to find 11,780 votes. To me,
Gals.
that's arguably worse than January 6th. How does that get a pass?
Okay, so it's not that gets a pass. I mean, obviously, there's an ongoing court case regarding it. Now, there's always a matter of interpretation when it comes to President Trump. There's the interpretation where he's asking the Georgia Secretary of State to falsify 12,000 votes in order to overturn the electoral results in Georgia. And then there's the interpretation, which I find frankly more plausible, which is that Donald Trump actively believes in his mind that there are a bunch of votes that are hidden in Georgia, and he believes that those votes can be found if the
He
search
just wanted
goes on long enough.
11,000 of them.
Okay. We're good there. All right. Let's go to the big screen, do the outro. So I am going to need a new outro since the focus of the channel is going to change slightly. I don't have one yet. So for right now, I'm just going to say goodnight. God loves you. I love you. Love each other. Forgive each other. That's about it. Forgive everyone for everything. You know what I'm saying? We're going to play the music. I'd like to thank Bree from Hive Science for coming by. Go check out her channel. It's a great channel. Her cryptoid stuff is great. She loves bees. So send her, give her a thumbs up and give the icons of bees. Thomas, thank you for coming by. Thank you for watching as always. I always appreciate you. Thank you for the advice on the cardio. I will give it a shot. Santiago, always good to see you. B.S. Lewis, what would my world be without you, my friend? I hope to be on your channel again sometime soon, and I hope to have you live on my channel again. Let's see, what else? I think that's everybody for today. Have a good night. Go vote if you haven't voted. Here comes the music.
And this world ain't right, won't accept it.